company, and my teams manage the Fusion and Escape brands, as well as the current models, as well as what we're doing in the future for those brands, and some products that aren't on the road yet today. So very excited to be here with you, and we're going to talk a little about fears this morning. So by show of hands, anyone here with a fear of heights? You've seen a few of those, yep. Needles, yeah, that one's right on. Public speaking, all right, got that one. What about theophobia? That's the fear of driving, so hopefully no issues there, right? We've gotten in lots of cars today. But for generations, public speaking, rejection, and death have been the most common fears among people. But we're seeing a shift in some of the generations. So also by show of hands, how many baby boomers do we have in the room today? Boomers, yep. Generation X, got some of those. Millennials, all right, we got a lot of millennials here today. We have noticed a big shift in those fears that we talked about earlier. So Ford did a study a little earlier this year on about 1,000 people. 500 of them were millennials, 500 were Gen Z, so that's even younger than millennial, that's 16 years to 22. And their number one fear, other drivers driving dangerously. So when you think about that, other drivers, more than ghosts, more than death, more than snakes and spiders, they're more concerned with the way other people are driving on the roads than anything else. So how did this happen? How could people become more afraid of other drivers than they are of your general common fears? Well, when you take a look at these specific generations, they were born digital, right? When they were babies, everybody had a personal computer, right? By the time they were tweens, they were already doing instant messaging, and of course, you know, all of that transitioned into texting and everything else that we do today in social media. I'm sure lots of you are aware of people within your house that text from room to room within the same house instead of going either outside to your room or across the street to see a friend. It's much easier to either instant message or text that person. So they have different concerns. There's new technology, different from when either we grew up, our parents grew up, or our grandparents were coming along. Because when you think about driver distraction back in the day, probably one of the biggest things that be driver distraction then was, you know, your family dog popping up to the front seat, or in the 70s, you know, you had somebody with a CB or something like that. It was probably the extent of what driver distraction was then. Totally different now. Because right now, it's all about connection, right? It's all about bringing the outside in. It's not the personal sanctuary when you're going for a drive sometimes. It's making sure that people are seeing what you're doing along the way. So either texting or shooting selfies or taking selfies. So this year, also, AT&T did a study. So we all know that texting while driving is an issue. But this study wanted to go a little deeper and talk about what are the other things that people are doing with their smartphones while they're driving. So 61%, as we know, have been texting. But even if you dig a little deeper, you see things like emailing, surfing the net, on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, taking selfies like we talked about, and even going as far as taking selfies and shooting video in a moving car. So I personally see that a lot. When I check Instagram or Facebook daily, you'll see one of my other either 30-something mommy friends shooting video of themselves and their kids in a moving car. And they think that they can do this safely. It's scary. So not only do we see them doing these things, but like I said, they think that they can do these things safely. So 62% of them keep their smartphones within easy reach. And then of those that are updating on Twitter, 30% of them say that they do it all the time. So it's not just a one-off, they're doing it all the time. And then of those that are accessing their social network while they're driving, 22% of them say they're doing it because they're addicted to social media. I'm addicted to social media, I can admit that. And then of those that are shooting videos, 27% are perfectly confident in saying that they're doing it safely. So, we've got an issue. We've got a global issue with driver distraction. And also consider this, another study done recently by Microsoft, taking everything into consideration with all the technology. Look at our attention spans. A goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. A human being today, 8. So we've got less attention span than a goldfish. All of those things combined mean that there's something that we need to do to make sure that there's some driver assist technology in our cars. So, in addition to the fears that we talked about earlier, there's lots of driving fears that this group has as well. So, and these are pretty common things. So number one, low visibility conditions. That's something that, of course, concerns a lot of us. Also, driving in things like snow and ice, backing out into a busy street. And then one thing that's really common is monitoring the blind spot. About 70% of people say that that's an issue. So those fears are actually tied into features that customers are demanding. And then, not surprisingly, we're seeing that these demands of technology are translating into things that people would purchase. So, would you be more likely to purchase a vehicle with these features? Can you help me parallel park? That's one thing. How about, can you help me monitor my blind spot? And then one that's really interesting, 52% of these people are saying that they would be comfortable or more comfortable in an autonomous vehicle. So very new news there. Definitely a big shift. So we also have another study some of you may be familiar with. It was J.D. Power's first tech choice study. So this was measured the technologies that customers would choose today, as well as emerging technologies that they would consider. And this data from J.D. Power falls exactly in line with the fears that we're talking about. Now the difference with the J.D. Power study is that it went across generations. So everything from pre-baby boomer to the Gen Z that we talked about, the 16 to 22-year-olds. And across the board, we saw things like blind spot detection as number one. We also saw night vision, something that's popping to the top, enhanced collision mitigation, and then rear view cameras. So another interesting thing we saw in this study was, when you think about technology, a tech choice study from J.D. Power, you would automatically assume that those choices would be around entertainment, comfort, and convenience. But collision protection was by far, and driver assist were by far the number one things that people were interested in, even over the things that we see in all of our TV ads, right? The entertainment, the connectivity, and the comfort and convenience features. So the J.D. Power study also dug into autonomous driving. So what they saw was that autonomous vehicle technologies were also ranked as top picks by almost every group. So taking it across all the different generations, but we see Gen Y and Gen X are still more accepting of fully or limited autonomous vehicles. And these findings also demonstrate that people are getting a lot more comfortable with features where the vehicle takes over some of the control of, say, things like steering and braking. And what's interesting about that is those are the building blocks of getting to fully autonomous vehicles. So, what's Ford doing about all this? All right? How do we translate what the customer is telling us about their fears, and how do we kind of satisfy that for them as it relates to vehicle development? Well, here to tell us more about what we're doing today, as well as what we're doing in the near future and in the long term, is Jim Paskowski. Jim?
Thank you, Crystal. Good morning and welcome. Well, first of all, I bet that looking at that title, you had at least 2 questions. First one, yes, it does fit on my business card. Second, well, what does it mean? What it really means is that I have 36 years of experience with Ford. Started with Ford right out of college, all in electronics. So dating back to the early days of electronics in vehicles and powertrain controls and emissions all the way to today. And in fact, the last 4 years has really been focused, my attention has been focused on next generation innovation, bringing more experiences, technology-enabled experiences to Ford Motor Company. So that's what all that gibberish means. I have a great job of looking out to the future, making sure that the company is a pipeline full of experiences, great experiences for customers. Now, one of the things I want you to remember during this discussion is Ford's approach to delivering democratization of technology. We refer to it as democratization because it's about making these things affordable for all people that want them. Right? Making these technologies, delivering great value, delivering great experiences, which is provide great experiences, and making sure that everyone can afford them. And we're going to show you how we're already doing that. We've already done that today, and I'm going to take you through some features. Now, let's start off with backup cameras. How many of you have a car with a backup camera? People love it. Once you have it, it's great. It adds that visibility out the side of the back of the vehicle. You know, we offer it on 19 vehicles today across the Ford lineup today. You know, in fact, people tell us that the Ford backup camera is crisp, the brightest, crispest, sharpest picture, visibility out the rear of the vehicle. So we're pretty excited about that, and it really it's one of the areas that really addresses the concerns that Crystal highlighted in the survey. Next, Park Assist. As my kids went through driver's education, you know, probably the hardest thing that they had to learn and the thing that was most challenging for them was parallel parking in the driver's ed test. Right, and I think we all kind of get stressed out, especially in urban environments where there's a lot of traffic and everybody's anxious to get in that parking space, and you're trying to maneuver in as quick as possible, and really struggling to find a place. So the first one you find you want to get into. Well, Active Park Assist really takes a lot of the calculation and positioning of the steering wheel and does it for you. So it really is an advantage offered on 9 of Ford vehicles today. And in fact, we're not only offering parallel park assist, but we've now launched on Edge and Explorer perpendicular. Maybe you had a chance already out in the parking lot to try perpendicular park assist, so backing into parking spaces. I actually use that every day at work, parking into my parking space. It just takes a lot of the stress on positioning the car and so on, and allows faster execution or getting what I want, where I want quicker. Blind spot detection. Crystal mentioned about the fear of and the concern about objects, vehicles, and so on in your blind spot as you're traveling down the road. In fact, this is changing lanes and the obstacles and concerns about a vehicle in that blind spot are leading cause to many accidents. And so blind spot detection is a feature that people really appreciate. It augments, it's a driver assistance feature. My family refers to it as the yellow dot. So Dad, next car you get, make sure you get it with the yellow dot. They've gotten used to that. They feel safer, more comfortable changing lanes. Sometimes it's difficult to even anticipate the speed of a car. You might see them back there, you take a look, it looks safe. Guys sped into the blind spot space, and next thing you know, you have an accident. So it's an outstanding feature. It uses radar in the rear quarters of the vehicle. And an interesting part of the technology, and I just want to emphasize this because you're going to hear this over and over again, how we build features on top of features, how we fuse information together, how we use software to create new features. So we have a feature that's based on the blind spot detection radar that comes out the back of the vehicle that actually steers that radar to a more perpendicular position. So imagine it's Christmas time, you're in a mall, parking maybe between 2 large vehicles, inching out of that parking space. Normally what you have to do is you can't see anything, so you inch out a little bit and wait for somebody to beep the horn. If you don't, you inch out a little bit further. Well, in that mode, in that backup mode, we steer to the radar so it looks down the aisle, and we can give you an indication of whether there's a car coming from the right or left. So again, taking the stress out of backing out of those parking spaces. And again, simply using all the sensors that already exist on the vehicle and software to be able to deliver that feature. And blind spot is offered on 10 different vehicles within the Ford line and growing. Now, of course, navigation, taking the stress out of getting from point A to point B. We're on our 3rd generation of sync system. Excuse me for a second. 3rd generation of sync system. faster, higher performance, but we've also added a capacitive touchscreen, so you now have the pinch and zoom and swipe functions that you're probably used to on your smartphones, and making it more user-friendly to use. We've also added additional points of interest, so we can find destinations a bit faster, as well as we continue to improve voice recognition. Voice recognition is really key to addressing driver distraction. It lets you ask for things while keeping your eyes up, which is key to driver distraction, having that situational awareness around you, keeping your eyes up, your hands on the wheel. So voice recognition also improves in the SYNC 3 system, as well as other features as well that you'll see. Moving on, adaptive cruise control. Many of you are probably familiar with this. Radar out the front of the vehicle can track objects in front. Combining it with speed control, set your speed, it calculates the right distance, it maintains that distance between your vehicle and the vehicle in front of you. As you speed up or slow down, it changes that distance to make sure that you have adequate stopping distance between you and the car in front of you. Again, helping you better navigate roads and offered on 7 vehicles within the Ford vehicle line. Lane departure. Crystal mentioned that in terms of the survey as well too, and I don't know if you knew that over 50% of the fatalities in the U.S., North America, according to the NHTSA results, are related to single vehicle accidents. So it's a vehicle driving off the road somehow, getting out of its lane or whatever, not hitting another vehicle, just departing from the road. And that a lot of that relates to lane departure, not staying in the lane, and not having an alert warning. In fact, NHTSA also cites a study that they believe about 10% of these could be eliminated through lane departure warning. Now, lane departure warning uses a camera in front of the vehicle to look for the lane markers on the road. As you get close and go over that marker, we put a little nibble in the wheel, a little roughness or a little bump and shake in the wheel. Thank you. Shake in the wheel to identify that you're going over that line to help you get back into. So if you're not paying attention and you're drifting off a bit, it'll give you that little shake in the wheel to get you positioned again. We add on top of that lane keeping assistance, which not only identifies when you're going over that line, but also puts a little torque in the wheel to try to steer you back into the center of the lane as well too. To kind of give you that assistance to stay in that lane. So again, key technology and key assistance technology to help drivers really do a better job or help them augment their driving skills. Now, let me summarize for a second. You can see we're really serious about making, by the quotes I made on how many different vehicle lines, serious about offering these features across as many vehicles as possible, as fast as possible. And that is, the key to that is, of course, making them affordable for all. And focused on what Crystal highlighted, the top concerns that consumers have. So again, a part of Ford's strategy is really to democratize this technology, make it affordable, make it available for all. Now, we're on this journey.